I've been waiting on this thing for quite some time now, and if you're a regular viewer of the channel, you know I love my mini PCs. This is turning out to be one of my favorite mini PCs I've ever tested. What's going on, everybody? It's ETAPRIME back here again. Today we're going to be taking a look at the all-new ROG NUC 970. And again, I've been waiting on this for a little while now. Earlier this year, I saw it at CES and then again at Computex in Taipei. I was really wanting to get my hands on it at CES, but these weren't ready yet. But I finally got one, and I gotta say, this thing is putting out some really great performance given the form factor here. Since we've got the ROG branding here on this NUC, it is a gaming machine. We've got a dedicated GPU. They're actually offering two different models, one with an RTX 4060 and one with an RTX 4070. The one that I have for testing right now has the 4070. If you're interested in seeing the 4060 tested, let me know in the comments below and I'll see if I can get my hands on it. But I gotta say, just right off the bat, it does look really good. Down here at the bottom, we've got plenty of ventilation. It uses a dual fan system. Obviously, we need to cool that CPU off and that dedicated GPU. And inside of the box, we do have a few more accessories, like a vertical stand. And keep in mind, this ROG NUC can sit on the desk horizontally, but you're probably going to get the best cooling performance with the stand here. And when it comes to the power supply, we've got a pretty beefy one here, coming in at 330 watts. This system isn't going to pull 330 watts from the wall, but they did include this because the GPU we have here, again, is that RTX 4070, and it can pull up to around 145 watts. I definitely wanted to give you a look at this thing in the stand, and this is exactly how I've been using it. I have not even plugged it in horizontally on the desk. I think because over here is where all of our air is going to be drawn in, having it in the stand will offer better cooling for sure. And in my opinion, I just think it looks a lot better sitting vertically like this. And since we've got a gaming machine, they did have to add a little bit of RGB. We've got that ROG logo over here that lights up. We can fully control the RGB from Armory Crate. Taking a look at the I/O up front here, we've got an SD Express version 8.0 card reader, and this will support UHS 1, two full-size USB 3.2 Gen 2 ports, and a 3.5mm audio jack. Taking a look around back, we've got two more USB 3.2 Gen 2 ports, two USB 2.0 ports, 2.5 gigabit Ethernet, USB 4 running at a 40 gig protocol, full-size HDMI, and dual full-size display ports. So in total, we can actually connect 4 displays to this mini PC utilizing HDMI, both of those display ports, and that USB 4 port. Taking a look at the ASUS website, it looks like they're going to be offering this with 512 gigabytes of storage and 16 gigs of RAM, but if you wanted to upgrade, it's really easy to do so. There's one screw on the back. You can go ahead and pop this top off. Obviously, we'll need to unplug that front RGB right there. But now we've got access to the RAM, and this utilizes SODIMM plus Gen 4 SSDs. We've actually got 3 slots in here, so you can add a ton of storage. I've got 32 gigs of 5600 installed and a single 1TB Gen 4 M.2 SSD. And yeah, really easy to get in here, upgrade that storage, and if you needed to upgrade that RAM, it shouldn't be an issue whatsoever. Taking a look at the full specs, and remember we've got that ROG NUC 970. They do offer a lower end version, but with this one we get the Intel Ultra 9 185H, 16 cores, 22 threads, 6 performance cores up to 5.1 gigahertz, and 8 efficiency cores up to 3.8. Plus, we have those 2 low power efficiency cores up to 2.5. It's got that NVIDIA RTX 4070 laptop variant with 8 gigs of VRAM. You can add up to 64 gigabytes of DDR5 at 5600. You can add up to 3 2280 PCIe Gen 4 SSDs. We've also got Wi-Fi 6E, Bluetooth 5.2, and I'm going to be running Windows 11 on this machine. Before we take a closer look at the operating system and everything else, I did want to show you a little bit of gaming here. We're going to start out strong. I will test more games by the end of the video, but we've got Cyberpunk 2077, 1440p Ultra settings, and I'm using NVIDIA's FrameGen technology. We're seeing averages of around 95 FPS, and this would definitely handle a little bit of ray tracing. You will have to enable some DLSS, but I'm not a huge fan of it, and I think it looks great like this at 1440p Ultra. All right, jumping right into the operating system here. Been up and running for a while now. As you can see, we've got that 185H, 16 cores, 22 threads, and I'll tell you this does boost up to around 100, up to 120 watts every once in a while. Usually, while we're gaming, we're right there around 60. Over the past few years, I've tested most of these Intel NUCs with dedicated GPUs, and a lot of them do get really loud. Some of them sounded like jet engines, But the way they've got thermal management here, it's actually not as loud as I thought it would be. I figured this thing would be blasting out, but it's a lot quieter than any of these other NUCs with dedicated GPUs that I've ever tested. We've got 32 gigs of 5600 megahertz RAM. Of course, we could use the Intel Arc iGPU here, but we've got that RTX 4070, and again, they do make an RTX 4060 version of this mini PC. Power control is going to be handled by Armory Crate. I've got everything updated here. We've got a few different profiles: turbo, performance, silent, Windows. So Windows, if we go to, high performance mode, it's going to be there. Obviously, turbo is going to be the highest. But one thing they've kind of removed from a lot of their newer systems is the manual mode here. And for me, this is kind of a letdown. I really wish they had it here. I was hoping to see it, but unfortunately, it's not with the newest version of Armory Crate updated for this system. It used to be that we could get in here and adjust the TDP and fan curves through Armory Crate, but they've kind of removed it for a lot of their newer stuff. We've got control of that RGB up front. So our NUC right here, basically all the regular settings with their Aura software, and we can make this look exactly how we want it. I've got kind of a purple and blue gradient going right now. I think it looks really good. You can manually do this, or we've got a bunch of different presets. But yeah, I mean, everything's been working well so far. Just wish we had manual mode here. And I did take a peek in the BIOS. There are some performance and fan settings from there, but I'm leaving this all stock. We're just going to be relying on Armory Crate here in turbo mode for all of the benchmarks and games we're going to be testing in this video. I was also really curious to see what kind of TGP this laptop RTX 4070 was running at. And it looks like we're doing pretty good here. Usually we've got like 115 watts with the 25 watt boost on that RTX 4070 laptop version. It looks like the one we have here does have that boost enabled, and we're up to around 140 watts just on that GPU. So we're pegged out at 100%. We should see some great 1440p gaming out of this system. The next thing I wanted to take a look at were some benchmarks, and the first one here is Geekbench 6. And this is strictly for CPU performance, coming in with a single core of 2,507, multi-core 14,002. And yeah, this is definitely one of the higher scores that I've seen out of these Ultra chips, but then again, it is the Intel Ultra 9 185H. I also ran some 3D Mark GPU benchmarks: Steel Nomad 2,558, Firestrike 25,570, and finally, we've got Time Spy with a pretty impressive 12,117, falling right in line with other similarly spec systems. So yeah, I mean, this is definitely a little 1440p gaming machine, so let's move over to some more gaming. Helldivers 2, 1440p, ultra settings, and I am using DLSS with this at 1440p because after all, this is not a desktop GPU, this is the laptop 4070 with only 8 gigs of VRAM. We're seeing averages of around 78 FPS, and I mean, it does feel really good. And with a decent monitor, even just a good IPS display, it's really hard for me to tell the difference between DLSS on or off. Now, when we start taking DLSS to performance, it really does lower that resolution. I can kind of tell, but at balance, I'm fine with this. I wanted to throw my favorite game at it at 4K maxed out, so we're at ultra high, and I'm not using any kind of graphics mods. I'm sure we could throw a few here and there at it with the way we're running right now. At 4K, OG Skyrim running at a constant 60. Forza Horizon 5, 1440p, extreme settings. We're seeing an average of around 85 FPS with this. And when we get out on the open road, not a lot going on. This will jump up into the hundreds every once in a while. But for the most part, we're running really stable here. And I don't need any kind of DLSS with this. It just works great at 1440p. Spiderman, Miles Morales, 1440p, very high, no DLSS. We're seeing some really good performance, and with the newer updates for this game, at least the last update that was released, I saw a huge increase on iGPUs and just DGPUs in general. I think they've done a really good job optimizing this game, and remember, you're going to see the same kind of performance with Spider-Man Remastered. Red Dead Redemption 2, 1440p, Ultra, using the built-in benchmark, and I did run into some weird issues with the settings. I actually had to run this benchmark a few times because everything started kind of defaulting to even lower, and I was getting a really high frame rate. I knew something wasn't right, but I finally got it fixed, and at 1440 Ultra, DLSS set to balanced, we had a minimum of 17, and I've seen this quite a bit with DLSS, a maximum of 119 and an average of 81. And the final game we have here is Horizon Forbidden West, 1440p, high, and I am using NVIDIA's Frame Gen. We can enable it from within the game on this one, and it really helps out. This is a harder one to run, and at 1440p, high settings with no DLSS or Frame Gen off, we're seeing averages of around 51 FPS, but with Frame Gen on, we're up in the mid-90s. Next thing I wanted to talk about here was total system power consumption, and while I'm doing all of my testing, I've got this plugged into a kilowatt meter. It's going to give us the total drawn from the wall, and this might not matter to some people out there, but in certain locations, energy cost can be quite high. And since we've got that dedicated GPU, this does pull quite a bit more than other mini PCs with no DGPU. Idle, around 18 watts. 4K video playback, we're pushing around 23. An average 1440p gaming, total from the wall, 183 watts. Not completely horrible, pulling a lot less than most other full-size desktop PCs. But the last thing here are temps for the CPU and GPU. Like I mentioned, the fans on this thing don't get as loud as I thought they would, and really I've seen this a lot, especially with these Intel Ultra CPUs. They do run at higher temperatures, and I think that's how they're getting away with this thing not blasting all the time. Because while gaming, our average CPU temp was 88 degrees Celsius, and I did see it jump up to 100 while gaming in some cases. Average GPU, 65, and the maximum temperatures that I recorded with hardware info were on the CPU, 102 degrees Celsius, and the GPU up to 69. This is one of the big reasons I want to see that manual mode, just so I can adjust those fan curves. Personally, having a little bit of a louder fan in this wouldn't bug me at all, as long as I can keep those temperatures down and those clocks up on the CPU. But overall, I do think that this is a great performer. Price is definitely going to be a factor. These things aren't coming in cheap. You can pick up a laptop with the same kind of specs for much cheaper, which is definitely odd. But these are kind of a certain use case scenario, people who really want that super small form factor gaming PC. But that's going to wrap it up for this video. I will have at least one more coming up with this thing. I want to spend at least a week with it. I want to see if we can get those fans up just a bit. I've got some BIOS tweaks that I can do with this thing. And if there's anything else you want to see running on the ROG NUC, just let me know in the comments below. If you're interested in learning a little more, I'll leave a link in the description. Like always, thanks for watching.